You never know when you're going to find that hope, when you're going to find that destiny is calling you. And so please hang on, because usually when we're at our darkest moments, it's literally right before something beautiful happens. And so many people don't wait. They don't wait. It's like they can't handle it. It's the darkest of the darkest days.
Goosebumps. I've got goosebumps.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Trans Boss podcast, home of the Trans Boss movement, the place where empowered trans people come to discover what it takes to become the best versions of themselves. I am your host, Jasmine Vine, a Transfem trans empowerment specialist and the CEO of Divine, and I'm here to guide you on this empowering journey. In each episode, we'll dive deep into topics that matter to us trans people, like navigating through societal challenges, as well as building resilience and embracing an empowering mindset. We'll explore it all. We'll also bring on some incredible guests who are making a positive impact in the trans community. The Trans Boss podcast is your go-to resource for empowerment, hope, wisdom, and epic stories from empowered trans bosses across the globe. It's time to kick life's ass and create an empowered, authentic you. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Hello, and welcome to this episode. Now, I am very excited today to welcome Kaedyn Nedopak to the podcast. So Kaedyn is known as the Trans Fairy Prince. Kaedyn is an accomplished queer transgender producer, author, and activist who leverages the arts to foster change and inclusivity. He's got over 3 decades of experience in the digital realm. His work has spanned across award-winning viral series, influential hosting roles across various media platforms. As a passionate advocate for the trans and LGBTQIA+ community, his content, including his podcast, The Reassignment, offers invaluable support and education. And his upcoming book trilogy, Charley's Song, is a series with strong trans, non-binary, and intersex representation. Oh, I am so excited to welcome my friend Kaedyn to the podcast. Welcome, Kaedyn.
Hi, Jasmine. Thank you so much for having me. And what an epic introduction. Thank you. I love
Well,
it.
thank you. I
Sometimes
did
you're
it
like,
in about
oh,
5 minutes.
oh yeah, like I did do all those things. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. So
Very
good to be
welcome.
here.
So just a few rapid answer questions for you, just to start off for people to get to know you a little bit better. How do you identify and what are your pronouns?
I identify as trans masculine, and my pronouns are he, they. I am non-binary, but I always like to tell people I am binary when it comes to the body. I had top surgery, I'm on testosterone. I really want to transform my body into that masculine look. But in terms of gender, I'm 100% non-conforming.
Ew, cool. Okay. And what is something that you believe in?
Ooh, I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine, and I was saying to her that I believe in magic, meaning
Ooh.
I believe that when we believe in ourselves and we fully believe that, like, what we came here for, what we came here to achieve, to learn, to grow, when we fully put our heart and soul into that, that those things will happen. So I really believe in the power of everyone's individual magic. And yeah, we can go into that a little bit more too.
Yes. The power of intention. Yes.
Yes. Well, not even just
Yeah.
intention. I feel it's a belief in
Mm.
something bigger than us. That if we really feel in tune and we really feel we came here to do something, whether
Yeah.
it's to be a host or a doctor or a teacher, that calling is there for a reason. And if we follow
Mm.
those vibes, then it's probably going to lead to a lot
Ooh.
happier life.
Ooh, okay. I'm excited to ask more about the book where it's,
Yes,
'cause those themes are very much in there, I can tell.
absolutely.
One more question for you though. What do you want to see more of in the world?
Acceptance. Acceptance
Mm.
of people's individuality, and not an environment where we are all about individualism, but acceptance of everyone's unique selves. I think we just have so many rules and standards, and everything's binary of you're allowed to be this,
Mm.
you can't be this. I really just want people to have full autonomy in both their body and their lives and their beliefs to be who they are.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Well,
Whew.
speaking of,
I got through that. I got through
speaking
the
of,
speed round. I'm just
yes. Oh, ding, ding, ding. Next thing. So you have been working on this book trilogy, you said for 8 years. So you've been putting a lot of work into this behind the
yes,
scenes.
yes.
First of all, like, how did you stay motivated to keep going with that?
Really good question. I wanted to back up too and let everybody know it is a book trilogy, but it wasn't always a book
Mm,
trilogy. And in fact, in about 2016, I went to Ireland and I just got this download of like something came alive in me. And I came back and I felt like there was a
mm,
story that was trying to come out of me. So I spent like the rest of the year figuring that out, what that was. And we all know in America what happened in
mm,
2016. So there was a little bit of a distraction with El Presidente. And
mm.
then, in 2017, like I was like, oh, well, maybe I'm writing, I think it's a film. I'm going to write a film because I was a screenplay writer and a producer. So I wrote a film. It was terrible. I could not even begin to fit the story I wanted to in this, tiny amount of pages. So then I decided that it was going to be a TV show. I wrote a pilot. I wrote like a bunch of episodes. I went to pitch it. I was pitching it to a lot of Hollywood producers, and they made it very clear that it was a boys club. It was an elite club of people that all knew each other, and they really don't accept newbies. And they were like, well, we love your story, but we're going to take it and we're going to, you're not going to be part of it. And so I had a conversation with a friend of mine, a producer that I know, Mark Ordesky, who worked on Lord of the Rings. And he said, Kaedyn, I'm not going to use my old name. He said, Kaedyn, here's the thing. If you really want this story to be yours, if you want your voice to come through and you want to own the IP, I would highly recommend you go turn this into a book and then turn around and repitch it. And at first I was like, are you kidding me? I don't know how to write a book. Like, I'm a writer. I'm a professional writer. I'm a creator. I'm a storyteller. And so I sat down and I started writing a few chapters and I was like, actually, I'm a huge fantasy reader and I thought this is what it was meant to be all along. And I kind of knew that immediately. This was like 2019. So I have been working on it ever since, but the pandemic happened. And to answer your question about motivation, it's taken a lot. I have almost given up on this project many times, whether I was going through depression and just didn't think I was going to be around to finish it, or I just felt like, yeah, I don't think I have what it takes to create this. And every time, like something came to me and said, but this is what you came here for. And it was like this knowing that this particular project was a culmination of my entire life, and it was the thing that I came here to create. I'm not saying I'm going to be, a billionaire author or a best-selling author. I do know that this story, or maybe the show that gets made from it, whatever that thing is, I came here to give. And so the thought of not finishing it and having people miss out on whatever message that was, whatever gift that was what really kept me motivated to keep going. That and a lot of friends that were like, you're not stopping. So people, every time I talked about the story, people would get so excited. I was like, okay, now I'm rejuvenated. Yeah. And I'm still on the final editing phase of it, so it's not quite done yet.
Yeah, yeah. It does take some dedication.
Oh my gosh. And this
Mm,
is not a tiny novel. This is probably 135K words. It's like double the normal novel
yeah.
size for young adult. I've switched the story multiple times from this to that, keeping the core of what I wanted. And so it's been through a lot. It's been through quite a journey. But
Yeah.
I was talking to my friend today, and they said, when we come here to birth these stories, like sometimes we have to feel the story. We have to work through the writing,
Mm.
and that's going to in turn help us with our own personal transformation. And when we are ready to be seen, then the story is going to come out. And so I'm feeling ready to be seen right now.
Nice. So all in all, like your trip and that knowing that's coming, it's all about the knowing. It's
Yeah.
you've got this feeling, you know that you're supposed to do this, you know that it's something that is wanting to come out of you. That's really interesting because it sounds like you have a really strong, deep connection with your intuition and with
Oh,
that own inner knowing.
absolutely. And my so
Mm,
my serious came to me in 2016. I had a big spiritual awakening in about 2012, and I was trying to figure out like who am I? What is my
Mm,
power in this world? And I actually started, my body had broken down at that time. I was working on a big show that I was producing that just
mm,
wrecked me. I mean, the industry was wrecking me. I was super stressed. I was out there creating this big thing, but I knew this
mm.
wasn't what I was meant to do. And so I kind of fell apart. And in that experience, like I ended up with adrenal fatigue.
Right.
I wasn't listening to my intuition. I wasn't listening to my body. I
Mm,
was basically trying to participate in our capitalist society. I was doing what everyone else expected of me. And during my
yeah.
awakening, I started practicing magic. I literally started practicing witchcraft. I read a book by this woman, Lori Cabot, who is a Salem witch. And literally, one of the lines in there is like, if you are reading this book and you feel a connection, you were called to this, which is what I hope my story does. And so, in that process of learning magic, magic is all about listening to your body, listening to your intuition, accessing your higher self. And so I've had many years of practice with that. And once you really get into the zone of believing and trusting your intuition, you never go back because it's always right. And so it's just a zone that I'm in right now. It's like every time I get those tingles, or I know that I'm supposed to do something, or I continuously hear a message over and over, it's like, okay, that's the direction I need to go. And that's how I live my life now, and it's never steered me wrong.
Beautiful. I would honestly record an entire podcast just on that because I
We
think that's
should
something
next
that's
time.
missing. Like that's
Yeah.
something that a lot of humans are really missing in the way that our society is structured. I think we're really disconnected from our intuition.
Yeah.
And I wonder, Charlie's song, being that it's come from this kind of place, do you view it as a way that it's going to help people connect with themselves, their identity more, and connect with their intuition more?
Absolutely. Such good questions. Such good questions. This story, I mean, at a plot level, it's a story about a group of LGBTQ teens. The leads are trans and non-binary. It's about a group
Yeah.
of teens who kind of discover their own individual powers. Charlie has storm magic. I'm not going to ruin it for everybody else. We'll let that settle when you read the story. And they realize that they need to come together as a collective. There's 13 of them. They need to come together as a collective to perform this big thing that needs to happen at the end of the
Mm,
story. But at a core level, the themes are all about self-power. And the theme of the story is that it's difficult to access your full power, your magic. It's difficult to believe in yourself, to trust your intuition, to not have doubt about your path and your place in this world, to want to be
mm,
seen and heard. It's really difficult to do that if you're still hanging on to old wounds, whether they're past life wounds, which they've done a lot of studies recently about kids that are coming into this world that are too
mm,
young to have had any experiences, but they remember being murdered in past lives. Like it's wild. I'm one of
mm,
those people. I remember that. You've got past life wounds, you've got childhood wounds, you've got, growing up in any society, the norms and the rules that the patriarchy pushes on us, we're so wounded. And in that place, we are always oppressed, even within ourselves. Even if we have all the privilege in the world, people still feel like they aren't good enough. And so
mm,
this story is about clearing out those channels so that we have full access to our magic, because there's so many people in this world
mm.
that have that magic, that have those talents. And by magic, I don't mean like storm magic. There are people who are musicians and creators and writers and nurses and lawyers. I mean, anybody who just brings them their full selves to life and their gifts to the world. But a lot of
Mm.
people doubt that they are important. They doubt that they play a unique role in this world and on this earth. And by clearing all of that trauma as best we can and really working through that inner stuff, our shadow work, we now have access to believe, like we talked about believing. Like you could have power, but if you don't believe that you are powerful, it's not going to help
Mm.
anything. So at the core level, that is what the story is about. And I took trans and non-binary and queer characters and I made them the heroes. So they're not just these secondary characters. They are the ones that go through the main journey. And I do hope that people get to read this and say like, oh, okay, well now I get an understanding of what it's like to be trans. You know, we're not seen as like these
Mm,
predators or whatever some people in society
yeah.
like to call us. So yes, I that's really the theme is standing in your own power, finding your own magic, and I do hope
Mm,
that is something that's relatable by the at least by the end
yeah.
of the trilogy. Maybe not by the end of book one, but definitely by the end of the trilogy.
Beautiful. I've just got this image in my mind of how people train elephants to not run away. This will probably seem totally disconnected, but it's related, I promise. They would have rope around like an elephant's ankle and tie it to something really heavy so that the elephant isn't able to move away. Like to, I think they do this in circuses and whatnot. I'm certainly not advocating for that, but for the context of this, after a while, the elephants think that they can't go anywhere, even if they've just got the rope around and it's not tied to anything. And I think that's where a lot of people are at. And I'm sure you've probably experienced that yourself throughout life. And it sounds like the theme of the book is partly about discovering your own magic, discovering the power that you have, and realizing that there's no weight attached to that freaking rope.
Yeah.
You have more power, you can do the things. So, really awesome themes as part of that. And I wonder what other themes are in this book, because I know it's set in in the 1800s.
Yeah.
There's themes around oh well, I'll let you talk about it. Well, tell me, what are some of those themes?
Absolutely. Well, speaking of power, I think this is a very important theme. It's probably the number one
Mm,
theme is not only do we have our own power, but, and this is something the main character goes through, a little bit of spoiler, is that not everyone loves this person at first. They don't
mm,
walk onto the scene as a hero. In fact, they feel powerless. And the moment that they
mm,
realize that they have this power, they actually abuse it. And so, a major
mm,
theme that I unveil or that I really have throughout the story is that when people do get power, who actually uses it for the benefit of
mm.
all, and this is where the healing comes in, and who abuses it for their own gain. And I think this is such a big topic and, you know, reality that we deal with in this world is because I think people aren't dealing with their own trauma, they're not dealing with their demons and their shadows, that
Yeah.
sometimes people get power, and we could see this with like J.K. Rowling, right? People get power
Mm,
and they turn around, and because they're not healed, they haven't dealt with their stuff, they turn around and they use it to abuse others. And
yeah.
so most of the main characters aren't in that boat, but all of the peripheral characters, mostly the adults, there's people in powerful positions. There's an empress, there's a colonel in the army,
Mm,
and we see how damaging that abuse of power is, but also how alluring it is to want to go to war with those people, to want to do anything to one up those people, when in reality, that's not the way. War is not the way, and that plays a huge that line right there, war is not the way. That plays a huge role in my story. The other thing is having empathy for other people who are not us. You know, it's like just getting to know people. There's different class systems in this book. You know, it's the 1800s. It's everything that you
mm,
can imagine in that Victorian era, and there's a lot of people. There's farmers, there's military, there's, you know, noblemen, and really we get to see like who has empathy for others. And usually that empathy comes from kind of shared experiences, like I was traumatized, you were traumatized, I totally understand how this is. And we get to see like the process of like how do we get empathy for people
mm.
who are not like us, you know, and everybody in the story is marginalized in some way, shape, or form. And we just really kind of get to see that joint adversity experience, if that makes sense. Yeah, it's really about
Beautiful.
connection. Oh, and lastly, there are tons of themes of like found family. It's all about like, hey, my family did not accept me, especially in this era, and a lot of these teens find one another, but it's also about collective community. It's that there's no one hero. It's that a group of people learn that they have to work together, that they are all part of the process. And I think that's
Mm,
really big. We do not do this life alone.
yeah. And I think I read that there were, like, was it overcoming colonialism? There was like something along those lines as well.
Yes. So just to back up a bit, the inspiration
Yeah.
to this story, I was telling you earlier that I'm like 76% Slavic,
Mm.
Ukrainian, Polish, and then I have a side of me that's like Irish and French. And when you're looking at all of these different ancestral lines, when I went to Ireland in 2016, I learned a lot about the famine that I did not know. I mean, you think you know it, and
Yeah.
then you hear it from an Irish historian, and it's like, wow, this is crazier than I
Mm.
imagined. The colonization of Great Britain, and not even that, but how they handled this catastrophe. And I think I even put that in my pitch is that Great Britain, they continued to export food out of the country because they wanted their own economic power. I'm Ukrainian, and Joseph Stalin created the Holodomor in Ukraine, where it was like a genocide against the Ukrainian people. Totally took everyone off their farms, collectivized the farms, and millions of people died. And these two incidents were the primary inspiration. It's like when something happens, when a catastrophe happens, and it's very inspired by the French Revolution, which not a lot of people know was actually caused by a weather phenomenon. So there was a
Oh.
giant hailstorm that killed, I'm sorry, that it slayed just like millions of crops. They had a huge
Mm.
bread shortage, and that was during an era of time where the rich and the poor were divided already. And so, of course, the rich people were like, well, we're going to take all the bread. That's all reserves for us, and millions of people were dying. And in these instances, when things go wrong, who suffers? It's the oppressed,
Mm.
right? And so when we're talking about themes of colonization, we're experiencing this in the world today, right? We see
Mm.
countries take over other countries, and like Great Britain blamed Ireland for not being able to handle a famine when they set that country up in the first place for devastation. They took all the resources, they took all the land, they took over, they were the landlords, in a country that wasn't even theirs. And then they blamed the Irish people. We're seeing that again around the world where people will America, America goes in and they just start wars with other countries, steal all their resources, and then they turn around and they're like, "Oh, that country is full of terrorists," because they're trying to play that game.
Yeah.
They don't want us to feel bad for people. And so these themes were really prevalent in like my ancestry. And that's what really inspired this story because the story is about an event that happens that throws the harvest into chaos. And we get to see how people react, how the rich react, how the poor are treated, because that's what we're dealing with today. So, colonization and imperialism is a huge, huge theme in my story.
Beautiful. Overall, with the story, I want to know what impact do you want this story to have on the world?
It's interesting you ask that because I think when I first started it, I had that mindset of like, I'm going to be a best-selling author and millions of people are going to read this.
You
And then
know,
I
I just
thought
want
to
to add
myself,
like a niche joke here. If you want to
yeah,
do that, make sure you have a growing mold wall behind you.
touche.
Those who know.
Yeah, I mean, I am in Oregon, like it's covered up behind the painting back here. No. Oh my gosh. No, but I kind of quickly veered away from that. I over my journey and over my awakening and all throughout this journey that I've had of coming out, I kind of came to realize that I came here to present this gift, not necessarily to the world, but to the people that needed to read it. That could be one person. That could be a handful of people. So my goal is that I knew that I was meant to write this. I knew that I was meant to create this, whether it's the story or the show, and the people that needed to see it are going to see it. And whatever happens after that is sort of up to fate, up to destiny. So it's not that I want the world to see it. I mean, if they do, that's fantastic for me and my career. But for me, the goal is that it gets in the hands of the people that need it. And as a healer, it gets in the hands of people that need to hear the message, that are waiting for this story to stand in their power. It gets in the hands of, makes me tear up a little bit, of trans kids who have never seen, maybe a trans kid is out there like contemplating life and they read this story and they go, oh my gosh, I could be a hero. I could change the world. And so it's the right people that need to see it, that I hope see it. And so I'm just, it's kind of out of my control who those people are, but my job is to put it out there, and the rest is, I'm going to call it destiny.
Oh, that hits deep
I
with,
know. I was like, oh boy,
yeah,
felt me. It's,
because
it's
that
that Pisces moon.
representation, like,
Uh,
it's getting a little bit better, but having that
yeah,
trans, non-binary, and especially like intersex representation as well,
yeah.
often so left behind.
So left
How do you feel
behind.
that would
Yeah.
have helped? Let's, how about like you in particular? How would it have helped you to be exposed to this representation, have this story as a young trans person?
Well, as somebody that's in their 40s, as a trans person, like looking back, I feel like, oh yeah, I definitely never fit the gender norms, at least in my
Mm,
mind. But when I was growing up, people who are trans were villainized. It was always a
mm,
trans woman. It was always, they'd call them transsexuals back then, but in a very
yeah.
derogatory way. And it was always amplified as like this person has mental health issues. And
Mm,
if I had seen a trans person that was just like a hero that was celebrated by society, I think I probably would have come out a lot sooner. And it
mm,
also would have made me feel like I belonged, because there was literally no trans representation other than, again, being villainized, but also there was no queer representation. Both of those
mm,
things, and I'm queer too, so both of those things were so shunned, and magic as well. All three of those were, there's just so much stigma around those topics and those type of identities. And I feel that if I were to have the story growing up, I just would have felt seen.
mm,
And that's the big
yeah,
thing, is I want people to be like, yes. And I want to add another note on that. So you mentioned it a moment ago, intersex.
yeah.
One of the main characters is intersex, and I added that last minute because I was like, oh no, I need to have these people. And it totally worked out so beautifully with that character's plot. I was like, how did I not think of this before? And that is one of the main groups that never gets talked about, that never gets representation. I am also a board member of the California Aggregation of Gender Diversity, and we are putting together we're trying to build a museum in San Francisco
Mm,
for trans history, and we're starting our content and our focus around intersex folks, because we realize that they are the number one group of people that do not ever get included. So I have both story and this group, and I'm like, intersex people, we love you and we're coming for you, and we want you to be humanity's heroes. You deserve it.
yeah, that definitely struck a chord with me because at a conference recently, there was some panels of intersex people talking about their experiences, and there were some things that I realized, even as a trans person who's been advocating around this kind of stuff for years, that I didn't know about their experience at all. How some people feel invalidated by the term queer, for example, as like an umbrella term for everyone that comes under the LGBTQIA plus community, because some intersex people are like, I'm not queer. I'm
Yeah.
straight. I was brought
Yeah.
up like in like the gender I believed I was. They're cisgender, but they're intersex. So that was something I'd never really thought about before. Someone can be cisgender, heterosexual, and intersex, and they don't identify as queer. So,
And isn't it interesting that now that you say that, I'm in my mind, I'm
hmm,
thinking, isn't it interesting that there are cisgender, heterosexual, and then literally everything else is LGBTQ? Why? Like why?
yeah,
Like why do we have
it's
these like
interesting.
two separate groups? There's really no in
Hmm,
between, and it's like, okay, well maybe everybody's just themselves, whether they identify as that or
yeah,
not. Yeah, that's something I didn't thought about either. Thank you.
hmm, very welcome. Definitely expanded my mind to some
Yeah.
things. So I love seeing the representation for intersex people.
Yeah.
Um,
And there are straight trans people too, okay? Like we gotta nix that. Every
yes,
trans person is not queer. Okay?
yes.
Two totally different
Oh
things.
my goodness. I had a bit of a hello, lovely. If you like what you're hearing so far, and I hope you do, then you are going to love the free trainings that I have. So, these trainings have helped hundreds of my own clients and my followers get into a place of empowerment, loving their authentic selves with more hope, comfort, confidence, and safety. And that is really what we're all about here. So, if you're listening to this podcast, there's something for you, trans or not, whether you're interested in trauma healing or, learning to live a more empowered life, in control life, or if you're just sick of your voice getting you misgendered, then these trainings break down my core methodologies to help you with all of that and more. And it's the methodologies that I use with all of my clients. So you can register for that via the link in the description box below, and I will see you there. Mwah. Now let's get back into the episode. I had a bit of a laugh the other day because I was going through the Kickstarter that you posted. I was going through all the stuff in there with my partner, and she was just frothing at the mouth. She's like, oh my gosh, this seems amazing. She's going through the themes and she's like, found family. And she's like, sapphic, yes. And then she's like, oh, heterosexual too, I guess.
Isn't it? Okay, so I did. Okay, so for anybody that's not listening, go look at the Kickstarter. That's up. We'll probably getting links. But I do have a portion in there. And I said, if these are the themes, these are the tropes. And I said something like, there's going to be tons of romance, T for T, sapphic, MM, yes. And then I was like, da da da. And don't worry, heterosexual too. There's literally like one heterosexual couple. Like there's everybody else in there you don't even know. Like either I very much am like they're queer or trans or whatever, or like you don't know, but then there's definitely like one heterosexual character for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, and he's like a side character. No, it's just, I'm trying to include everybody. I don't want heterosexual people to get offended. I posted when I was looking for an artist for my book cover, I posted it in a group and I said, I really want this team to be LGBTQ because I'm promoting my community and I want to hire people who are trans or queer or whomever, however you identify. I just want to give more work. It's paid work. I want to give it to my community. And several, of course, they were cishet white men. Several of them came at me super violent. They got so angry. They told me that I was being like anti-heterosexual, all that stuff that people make up. And they were so mad that I was not inclusive. And I was like, okay, but like, no. I specifically have this work and I want to hire people that are underrepresented. And there's a huge difference because, sorry, buddies, you probably get work all the time through your buds. And, but I'm still being inclusive. There's tons of people and there's a mix of people of ages and you name it. So I'm trying to put as much in there as possible. Hopefully I can do that all justice in 3 books. Yeah. There might have to be some spin-off books for characters we love, but I'm trying.
Yeah, nice. And that's the thing. Like that representation is there for a reason. Heterosexual people typically don't need that representation. They've got plenty. So
literally 99% of what I see on television, especially if it's historical, is cishet. And so when do we, I mean, or they'll be like gay men, right? They're always going to throw in, they're usually white gay men. Always. And it's like even like sapphic groups, like there's just nothing, when it comes to historical context and those sort of, and this is a historical fantasy, so there's definitely like history, but it's also my own world. So I was like, hey, if I'm going to make my own country, this is one of the reasons why I did not use a pre-existing country. It does take place in real world 1848 during the Age of Revolutions, inspired by the French Revolution, during an era where all these countries in the world were fighting against the monarchies and the dictators. People wanted democracy. They wanted freedom. But if I were going to have my own country so I could make my own story and not have to deal with history, it's like in the context, in the era, but my own world. So it's not fantasy. It is the real world. I was like, well, I'm going to make it diverse. I'm going to make it as diverse as possible because I can. And then nobody can tell me that crap that you hear all the time when you see a historical thing get made and people are like, there are no black people, nobles, or there were no queer nobles. It's like, in that world, maybe, in my world, there are. So there.
Yeah, absolutely love that. Okay. So coming back to the Kickstarter, there was a video that you posted on Instagram after you launched it. And I remember it because you got on there very vulnerable. You were crying and it was like a celebration. I wanted to know what was going on for you during that time.
So the video was, I think, 1.5 days into the Kickstarter. I got fully funded. Now this is like $10,000. And thank you. And now it's now doubled that, which I'm really excited about. And, it was one of those moments. I was just telling my friend about this. It was one of those moments where I had been out of work. I mean, I have been
Mm,
struggling for the last several years to try to get out of corporate America. I was making
yeah.
six figures in corporate. I was a producer. I hated it. I hated all of it. It was just
Mm,
slaving away for some corporate company that doesn't care, taking all the money. And I thought, I really want to get out of this world. So I moved to Oregon to actually create a healing center, which is kind of
mm.
the tail end of what I want this book series to turn into, is like bringing
Ooh.
people into this place of healing, which we can talk about. But
Yeah.
I had doubted it. Right. I had taken so long. I kept pausing and procrastinating, and I was struggling, trying to find work, trying to survive for definitely the last several years. And part of that was coming out as trans. And there's a lot of inner
Mm,
work that comes along with that. So I had taken a chance on myself. In April, I said, you know what? It's been months. I haven't found work. I need to do something. And it occurred to me that I was like, maybe I should just work on my book. Maybe it's time to get that done. But I can't afford to put it out there. I can't afford to hire editors or print it because like I don't have any
mm,
money. So it occurred to me like maybe I should do a Kickstarter. So I found this company that was helping me out with it. And I spent 3 months working on my Kickstarter. I designed the books, except for the art that Peach's amazing artist did for the book cover, the paperback cover. I designed everything else. I'm an artist and a creator,
mm.
and I just put so much of my love into this. And I was literally working on it like the day before, and I launched it. And I remember thinking, like, what if I fail? What if nobody wants this? And literally, like, Kickstarter's like 21 days, whatever, 30 days. 1.5 days in, I woke up and it was like fully funded, which means I got the base amount to pay for the printing. There's all sorts of other costs, but in that moment, it was this like, again, I trusted my intuition. I trusted my destiny.
Mm.
I trusted that my inner voice was showing me the way, and my soul was leading me down this path. And it was sort of a validation. It wasn't a validation that like people are going to like me or people are going to like my story. It was a validation that I had trusted myself, and this thing that I believed was going to happen happened. And I put so much effort into, everybody that knows me knows this. I put so much effort into helping other people. I am constantly messaging people. I am constantly communicating, even with people I've never met. And I'm always trying to give people, help and wisdom and hope. And I put so much out there that there was a part of me that was like, what if I don't get any love back? Like, what if like nobody cares? And so to have people show up for me in the one thing that I want to do in this lifetime, I was the Lord. Like everybody I knew came out of the woodwork. People I hadn't talked to in years backed the project. People I didn't even know I was still friends with because I thought maybe I came out and I haven't spoken to them in a while and maybe they don't like me anymore. They came out and backed it, and it was just this wow, people showed up. I showed up for my community, and my community showed up for me, and it was just so heartwarming.
Oh, I actually feel a little bit teary, like thinking about that and thinking about,
Mm.
you got these 13 people in the book that are like there, and it's the found family. I'm like, it's a little taste of that in our physical world.
Yeah. Especially if you're in the LGBTQ community, so many
Mm,
of us grew up without representation, without friends.
yeah.
And, I do feel that there are a lot of people in this world hiding. They have to for safety reasons.
Mm,
So, unless you're out, fully out, like you don't know. And
yeah.
I often find that like I'm like the only trans person or the only queer person in this group, unless, of course, I live in an awesome city, which I don't at the moment. And so we do feel alone, and it really does become about finding your family, finding those people, because most of the times our families aren't really understanding. Even if they love us, some people's families really shun
Mm,
them, they disown them, and that's terrible. I feel so bad for those people. Or families just don't get it and they just like don't want to acknowledge
mm,
it or deal with it. I mean, whatever that is, I feel that we usually end up finding our people through others
yeah.
who are not blood related
Yeah.
because of the circumstances and because of the shared experiences. And I love
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's honestly why we're recording this today. That's the whole
Exactly.
purpose of putting that content out there, is because I know there are isolated trans people, young trans people who feel so disconnected. Their family doesn't accept them. Maybe they don't have people who they can rely on or who are there for them in their
Yeah,
day to day life. So I think things like this, just putting content out there, putting stories out there, it's so, so important for those people to just hang on, like to actually hang on to their
absolutely.
life.
Oh, please do. Trust me, like,
Yeah.
I know I'm going to get teary about this, but I said this to my writing group the other day, and I'm going to do
Mm.
trigger warning suicide. It won't get any graphic, but this is what I shared with my writing groups. I said, this means so much to me because I went through massive depression the last few years, like just with the
Mm.
money and work and coming out. And, you lose so many friends when you come out. And it's just, it was
Mm.
so much on me that like I didn't tell a lot of people I was writing this book because I didn't know if I was going
Yeah.
to actually finish it. I didn't know if
Mm.
I was going to be here. And in coming out with this story, in putting out the Kickstarter, it was a promise to myself that I was going to finish the trilogy. I'm doing so
Mm.
much better now, by the way. But you never know when your life is going to change like that. You never
Yeah.
know when you're going to find that hope, when you're going to find that destiny is calling you. And so please hang on because usually when we're at our darkest moments, it's literally right before something beautiful happens. And so many people don't wait. They don't wait. It's like they can't handle it. It's the darkest of the darkest days.
Goosebumps. I've got goosebumps.
Yeah, and you know what? I've been there multiple
Mm.
times. The process of coming out, the process of having a spiritual awakening, and I should have known, but in those darkest of times, it's usually like we have nothing to lose, and that's when our soul
Mm.
is like, trust that you are here for a reason.
Yeah.
And usually what comes out of that is letting go of all that stuff that all that stuff you lost is stuff you didn't
Mm.
need, is people you didn't need, it's family you did not need. They were not going to support you in the first
Yeah.
place. And in being yourself and stepping back out into the world bravely, you are going to find family. You are going to find your destiny. You are going to find the thing that you're meant to do.
Yeah.
And I hear that story over and over and over. People are like, I almost died. And then,
Mm.
like that, I decided to stay. And guess
Yeah.
what? Look at my life now. And this is just the beginning. This was like a week ago.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, I'm here. I'm doing it. And so I'm trying to promote this book, and everyone's like, I didn't even know you were writing a book. I was like, yeah, I know. I was not talking about, I mean, I maybe had like a conversation here and there, but not much. And I was like, yeah,
Mm.
because I didn't want anybody to know. But now I do.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm here. I'm finishing it. I'm so in love with this story, and I hope I can do it justice as a first time author.
So exciting.
I
Ah,
know. I was like crying.
and I
Did
had
I
so
mention
many
Pisces
goosebumps.
moon? And I
Oh
always
my
blame the
goodness.
moon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're talking about like your past experience there with suicidality
Yeah.
and how that is a bit of a motivator for you putting this out here. But I want to know, has your journey in life, your transition journey as well, has that influenced what has been put in this book and in what ways?
I love this question. Okay, so I've been working on this story for a long time. I created all these other characters, and some of
Mm.
them were already queer. And, the intersex character I thought of a while ago, but the main character was a girl initially
Mm.
because I was a girl. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to base this off of me. And not,
Mm.
not in an ego way, but I was just like, oh, this character, obviously it's a first person. They go through a lot of what I went through because I'm writing this story.
Yeah.
It's channeling through me. And I'm sitting there trying to write this character and she's just not right. Like I was like, this is not the right character. It's the main character. So I'm frustrated because this is like the main character. And then, in the middle of writing it is when I came out. I didn't come out until like 2021 to myself. And it was when Elliot
Interesting.
Page came out. It's when Elliot Page came out, speaking of representation. And Elliot Page was telling the story, side note, about how they had gone to an award show and they walked into the room
Mm.
and their publicist had put all these dresses on the bed and they just broke down. And that had just happened to me. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then, I started looking into it. I started talking to other trans guys and trans masks who had done testosterone and surgery. And I was like, wow, all these things I've been thinking. And so I realized that Charley, whose previous name was Mary, that Charley was not a girl, was not a powerful, strong female, but actually a trans guy, a trans mask. And then once I realized that like that was the last thing that I needed to change, this story just came flowing out. It was like, oh, okay, this is what we're dealing with. And it was that I needed to come out myself in order to realize that my character was who they are. And so it definitely, and then just being part of the trans community, learning more about intersex people, learning more about all these variations in our identity really helped shape a lot of the characters. And, I definitely was like, oh, now I got to add that person. Oh, I got to add that in there. Oh, yeah. You know what? These people, they're not friends anymore. Now they're lovers. These women are now lovers. Like, I literally just went through and was like, everybody's going to be queer. Because this, the other thing is that I had initially started this as like a historical story, and I was trying to deal with like actual history. And then it was like, oh, but like in that country, these people would not have been able to be in this position of power
Mm.
because whatever. And I was like, you know what? I'm just scrapping that. I'm just going to make everybody this, even if they're in hiding, like literally everyone's queer in the book,
Yep.
everyone's queer and trans. So it really just helped me flesh out. And then that made me realize like who I was writing the story for, right? Before I just did
Mm.
not feel as connected to the story as I should have. I was connected to the social justice piece, but I wasn't fully connected to the characters' journeys, and many of them had elements missing. And then now that I made this switch, I was like, oh yeah, like I said, just having an intersex character, it completely fit the plot that I wanted to fit. So
Mm.
everything just kind of flowed after that.
Yeah. It's lovely when that happens, isn't it?
I
It's just like, oh,
know.
the floodgates are open.
Right. And then, there's that concept of like art imitates life, life imitates art.
Mm.
And somebody said to me, you got to be careful what you write because you're manifesting it. I don't really believe that. I was like, no, I
Mm.
actually think I'm going through experiences that were meant to be channeled into this story. I think it's the other way around.
Mm.
And I could not have those story elements in place until I went through the experience myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of art is that we experience something and then we put out our expression of that
Yeah.
experience into paintings or writing or music, right? What musician really just
Mm.
sits down and like, I'm going to come up with a song? Usually it's like, oh my gosh, I went through this heartbreak. Oh, this whole
Yeah.
album is about that. We express our feelings and our emotions and our experiences through our
Oh. So
art.
this is the tip of the iceberg. Like from the sounds of it, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I want to know
Yeah.
what is the longer term goal, or like where is this going? Where's the story in this world going?
So I think there's two things here that I would love to happen. On a
Mm.
professional level, it's a trilogy, so I definitely have many more years of writing the
Yeah.
story. I mean, it's a huge book series, so it just takes a long time. And then I have a prequel. I really want to make a tarot or oracle deck out of it, so I can just see this.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
like I cannot wait for that. That is like I was like, God, I just need like enough to. Then I'm gonna start working on that.
And there's so
So
much elemental symbolism that could be worked into this. Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm here for that.
yes, and the story is about elemental magic. It's about
Mm.
people, at least the main character, all of the people. It's more of a there's more I don't know if I want to call it magic. There's mythology, right? So in mythology, people have certain powers, like there's
Mm.
sirens, there's this, there's that. That's a hint to what
Yeah.
might be in the book. And certain people have certain abilities. So it's less like
Mm.
wizard, dragon magic, and more like, oh, people have abilities to do things that you would more find in a myth than you might in like
Ah.
a, modern day fantasy, which is usually like wizards and dragons.
Yeah.
Um, but along those lines, oh wait, what was it? I just lost my train of thought. What did you ask a second ago?
Oh
Forgot.
gosh, what did I ask? It's about the longer term
Yes, thank
direction.
you. Thank you.
Yes.
I just kind of spun off on magic for a minute there. The longer term direction. So in that, again, this story is about finding your power and healing. It very much is about healing trauma. And so
Mm.
I do hope that the book does well because I want to turn around and pitch it as an animated series. I just want to
Mm.
have a show that wins awards, but more so because I'm a producer and I work in television and film, is that hundreds of thousands of people work when you have
Yeah.
a show. So you're giving people work. I hope to find a company or or showrunner or creator to work with who is trans and queer. I
Mm.
really just want to give back to my community and want to involve as many of us as possible because I want our people to work. So that's part of it.
Mm.
But behind the scenes, I really want to draw people to this healing center that I want to create. I know hundreds of healers from all around the world, people of all different modalities and all different races and cultures. And I really want to create this place where we can invite people in, and each person that shows up finds their person. They find their next
Mm.
leader, they find their next teacher, because that's what my experience was. I found my teachers when I needed them, and there are people out there, and now I'm a teacher to others. And by creating this safe space where people can
Mm.
come and they can find their person, like however that ends up being, I don't know yet, it just continues the story of like you read about these characters healing, but now it's time for you to go on your healing journey, especially if you're a
Mm.
teenager, because if you can heal those wounds early on, you will spend a lot less of your life just dealing with it. Trust me, I didn't deal with them until
Mm.
later. And I just think about how many years I wasted dealing with trauma that I
Yeah.
could have really, you never get rid of it, right? But you work through it to a point where you can actually do other things instead of letting it eat you
Mm.
alive, or really like
Yeah.
kind of enable all of your actions and all of your reactions is more like it.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's the goal,
Yeah.
twofold goal.
Beautiful. Okay. Absolutely love that. And around like the trauma, I think there's a couple of ways that people generally go about that. They experience it and then they go through all the issues and whatnot that come up as a result of that. It steals so much of people's lives, so much attention, time, resources. But then eventually people overcome, and then they use those traumas, they use those experiences to create a ripple effect in the world. And that is what I'm seeing as part of this book, and like the work that you do is you haven't let the traumas or the issues from your past just put you into the fetal position and like not able to help anyone. You've actually used them to help connect with people and to help people through a healing journey. So I really want to commend you on that, and anyone
Thank
who chooses to
you.
do that, yes, because that is
Thank
so, so
you.
needed.
It is. And that's my
Oh,
hope for the readers is like, okay,
yeah.
now you go on your journey and you're the next generation that's going to teach the
Mm,
next generation. And my gosh, if we have this world where healing and
yeah.
feeling is so normalized and not stigmatized and our mental health is more taken care of, like imagine what we can create together. And I do
Yeah,
realize I'm not being naive in realizing there are forces and powers that be out there
of course.
and billionaires who don't want that to happen. They want to keep us oppressed. I know that. But we still have to do it. We still have to
Yeah.
try. And what is that
And
saying?
guess what? That's a good
Yeah.
and necessary part of a story, of a
Yes.
breakthrough.
Yes.
Mm,
Absolutely. And what is that saying? It's something like, oh, your trauma is going to be someone else's healing. I forgot what the saying is, but it's like whatever you go through in life, and you have that story, that's going to help the next person feel not
yeah.
alone. And that's really what I want. I mean, there's some, it's a young adult, so it's not graphic, but there are definitely a lot of implied things like sexual assault. I had to
Mm,
really sit down with like the being in the mind of a real predator and write these
mm,
characters and then write characters that had to overcome this, something I've had to deal with. But like those are really tough scenes. And
yeah.
but I do want to promise people we do take them through the process of healing. It's not just like, oh, this stuff happens and they're broken. It's like, no,
Mm,
we're going to watch them go through the process of finding one another
yeah.
and healing one another. And so it's definitely going to be a lot more uplifting. Maybe book one's a little crazy. Book one is chaos. But it's the
Oh my
status quo.
gosh.
It's what we live in now. And it's and then after that, there's a bigger story.
Setting the scene. Oh, the breakdown always comes before the breakthrough. That's,
Yes, yes,
yes,
absolutely.
beautiful. Far out. We've already spoken for like 52 minutes. I'm
Oh
like,
my gosh.
wow, we could just keep going.
I
But
know.
Where can people go to learn more about you and the things that you're doing, as well as support this story in this book if they want to?
Absolutely. Well, I am Trans Fairy Prince. That's trans FAERIE Prince, and I'm on Instagram and TikTok. And I would just point people there. You can go to
Mhm.
transfairyprince.com as my website, but I really don't have a lot on there because I just do so much more on social media. And so you can find me on Instagram and TikTok. You can watch some of my videos. If you're trans mask, if you're having top surgery or you're going through your transition with testosterone, I've got a lot of helpful videos, especially on TikTok. And then obviously I'm posting as much as I can about my story. You are going to find the link in my bio at those places, or you can go to transferryprince.com and you'll find the link to my Kickstarter. It is called Charley Song, CHARLE apostrophe S, sorry, Y apostrophe S song. And so, if you go on Kickstarter and you search Charley, it's gonna come up. It's the only Charley name in there. So it'll be up until October 1st. And then let's see where we can go. Oh, by the way, it's not, I feel like I have to tell people this because people get confused. I think because we're trans people and we're always like doing GoFundMe's for our surgeries,
Mm,
this is not a donation. You are actually pre-ordering the book. So if you back the
yeah.
Kickstarter, you're actually getting the book out of it. And I think people were like, "Oh, congrats, I'll pick up the book sometimes." Like, actually, now's the time that you should be pre-ordering it. So I'm just letting people know it'll be out a little bit later too for pre-order, but this is the initial. If you want your name in the acknowledgments, that is only happening on Kickstarter.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So it'll
everybody,
still be available for pre-order like after, it just won't be.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because obviously, if I'm making an ebook, that's going to be available later. I'm working
Yeah.
with a company that's going to have that. The collector's edition will not be. That is a limited edition,
Mm,
so we're going to get a certain amount made, and once they're gone, they're gone. So we have to get those again. But the paperback and the ebook, like they'll definitely be out later. But
yeah.
the thing about the Kickstarter is that as my thank you for getting this in advance and sort of helping me out, because again, some of this money is going to go towards me finishing the book, getting the editor, all of that. Everyone who gets an ebook, which is $10 and above, gets their name in the acknowledgments. So if you're trans and you want to see your name in the acknowledgments for the first time of a big book, that's the way to go. Otherwise, yeah, you can get it later.
And also the collector's edition is so pretty.
It's
So if you
so
get on the
cool.
Kickstarter, like,
Yeah, and we are
it is
like a
gorgeous.
few $1,000s away from getting our epic. There is a watercolor
Mm.
map that this famous, she is like a famous game designer and I'm sorry, cartographer and world designer, map designer. And I can't believe she wanted to work on my project. And I was like, okay, but I got to raise some money to get you. So this
Yeah.
watercolor map of my world and just to be able to see it. And the shape of the countries is very
Mm.
planned. Let me just put it that way. It's very
Oh,
magical.
okay.
It's very magical. Yeah, I thought
Interesting.
it, I'm not even going to tell you. I thought of it one day and I was like, there's three islands and I was like, "Oh, I know what I'm going to do with this." People are probably think
Ooh.
it's cheesy, but again, it is a calling for magical humans. As soon as they see it, they're going
Mm.
to know exactly what it is. Other people are going to miss it. So, do.
Ah.
See if you can guess.
Bit of intrigue. Ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, you'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Beautiful. All right, so we'll put all of those links in the show notes and whatnot. And to finish up, if you were to go back to your younger or closeted trans self and give them 30 seconds of advice, what would it be?
Be yourself and don't worry about what other people think of you because their opinions really don't matter. And I would
Beautiful.
say you came here for a reason. Trust that that is going to play out in this life and trust that you are going to be able to fulfill your own destiny.
Beautiful. This has been an awesome interview. I've absolutely loved this, the themes we've discussed. I've had goosebumps multiple times throughout.
Nice.
It's just absolutely awesome. So we will end up there. Thank you so much for watching and bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Trans Boss podcast. If you support the Trans Boss movement, it would help immensely if you could leave a review on your favorite podcasting app, follow us, and share your biggest takeaway from this episode on social media. Don't forget to tag me at jasmine.vinee on Instagram because I would love to see it. Now get out there, do the things, and take the next step into that empowered life you deserve. See you next time.